Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. All present. Public comment. Persons wishing to speak to an agenda item may raise their hand during public comment. The library board president will recognize you for the discussion at the appropriate time. Speakers will be allowed to provide, speakers will provide their name to the library board, after which the speaker will have 5 minutes to speak. And then any public comment? Seeing none? Okay. Notice to the public. Any member of the public wishing to address governing board on a topic within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda, may do so during the public comment period identified in this agenda. By law, subjects not on the agenda cannot be acted upon by the board except to briefly respond, clarify, or refer to staff for review and presentation at a future meeting. Guest presentations. Actually,
Yes.
okay, yes, guests and presentations.
Okay. With us this evening, we have Bonnie Katz, who is the director of the Solano County Library. I've invited her to speak to you about the library and what Solano County services can offer the Dixon Public Library. And she's been very helpful to me in the last 2.5 months as far as any services that I need or any questions, and she's been readily available and helped me on the Measure L report and all of that. So I'd like to invite Bonnie Katz up to respond to some questions you may have as a board of the Dixon Public Library for her.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Bonnie Katz, I'm Director of Library Services for Solano County
Yeah, perfect.
Library. Is that better?
Yeah.
Can
We
you
don't
hear me?
want you to hurt your neck from that thing.
Oh, trust me. Maybe I didn't want you to hear me. No, I'm just kidding. Anyhow, like I said, Ms. Brown has asked me to come and speak to the board about Solano County Library and our services. And also, if you have any questions about the county library. As you know, Dixon is part of the Splash system, which is run by Solano County. So we have a little bit of knowledge of the Dixon Library, collection-wise, circulation-wise, automation-wise, because we do support Dixon as a partner within our Splash system. And we've done that for many years. Dixon was not initially part of the system, but we were really glad when you decided to join us in our endeavor. And I think it helps in terms of the public getting library services within the county as a whole, because you, in addition to all the other partners, have the availability of the entire collection of all the public libraries in Solano County, in addition to St. Helena. So in terms of what the county library does and what kind of services we could offer you, and I just want to step back a second, because we have been in a contract with the Vacaville Library District, and as you know, there's 3 school district library districts in the state of California. Solano County is fortunate to have 2 of them, Dixon and Vacaville. The other one's in Coalingo, just in case you were interested. And it's a unique type of jurisdiction where, you as the school board have this wall, and then you jump over and you are the library board. The county's relationship with Vacaville goes back to Prop 13 when it was passed. When Prop 13 was passed, Vacaville lost all of its revenue. They came to the county and they said, "County, can we work out a contractual arrangement with you where you will run our libraries?" And the county at that time stepped in and said yes. So that has been going on for 40 or so years at this point, where the county library serves through a contract, as the administrator of the Vacaville libraries. When you walk into a Vacaville library right now, it looks like any other county library facility in terms of hours, collection, staff, and things like that. I'd like to hand you out some revised numbers. Thanks.
Thank you.
And this may be too much detail, and if it is, just tell me to.
Thank you.
I'm a numbers person, so I like
Oh, we
numbers.
appreciate it.
So, and I have the pages numbered at the bottom. It's just easier to speak from, and also if you have any questions. So the first two pages that you see would be basically, this is the same format that we use for Vacaville when we prepare the Vacaville Public Library budget. So there's two separate budgets. One is the district budget itself that has all of the fines, the fees, the revenues that come into the district, and that would be page 1. And then that would be page 2. And then when you get to page 3, that would be the line item budget that actually appears within the county library budget. So if you look at like page 1, you'll say, hey, there's no employees there. That's because all the employees are county library employees. And that's the way we've operated, which gives us, the county library, the ability to, to make sure that we are staffed properly, that when vacancies occur, we have the ability to hire. And they're all county employees. So that's where you see on page 3 and 4 are basically your regular ongoing costs that if you look at your budget now, they're budgeted within your fund. They would then be budgeted within the county library fund. And the way that works is if you go to page 2, this is how the county library operates in terms of charging. I keep going back to Vacaville because this is what this is based on. So the expenses in the Dixon Library would be your direct expenses. So that comes off page 3 and 4. Then, of course, there's a charge for administrative, for administration, for technical services, for automation, for a telephone assistance center. So that comes up to that number. And then, of course, you get your credit backs in terms of the revenue that is fines and fees, building use fees, anything like that. Any revenue that's collected within Dixon stays within Dixon. That credits back so that you see your total charge down there of 1346. If you go back to page 1 and you go to 2250 charge for service, you'll see that 1346 number. So those are the way the numbers go together. When you look at, well, what do we get for administrative costs? What do we get for technical services, automation, and our telephone assistance center? So I did bring you copies of the what you get for your money, so to speak. Did you copies? It'd just be easier. Okay, I'll give you this for the board, and then I'll give you copies. So what you see here is what all of these costs cover. You're welcome. And it's broken down by a percentage of either your full-time staff that you would have at the library or your circulation, which would be what your technical services would be. Automation, that would drop off your current budget because we would pick it up, but it's charged back at overhead. And we have a telephone assistance center where all the calls to the county library come to a center, and then if they need to talk to the specific branch, they're sent back out to the branch. And those figures in terms of the overhead, and it starts at page 6, so you can see the percentages of how we charge back all of our libraries. And I've included line 15, which would be Dixon, assuming some numbers. Remember, this is a draft. This is just stuff I was working with. And then when you look at pages 7 through 14, you'll see the way it's all broken out in percentages in terms of costs, and that's how all those costs go together. Some of the things that we do as a library, we have a $2 million materials budget That is spread out through all of we have a centralized selection, centralized materials budget. All of our libraries, including Vacaville, benefit from those collections because we circulate collections throughout the system, and we don't necessarily say, gee, hey, Vacaville, you only paid for this, therefore you can only have those items. We don't do things like that. We have something called floating collections, so wherever the material is returned, that's where it stays. If Vacaville has said to us, you know, here's our notice, we want to cancel the contract, we have a tracking system that says, okay, Vacaville, these are the items and the materials that you paid for. You know, the rest in your libraries belongs to the county, and we just
So
Call it even.
separate them out.
can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So you have the floating system, but then as the, say Vacaville, they can build their own system, and those obviously are still, would stay there. So,
Not really. What we do is, there's a materials budget for each of our branches, but
Okay.
not a large materials budget, not like the 2 million. But each branch has a branch budget, because there are some specific things, like reference materials and things like that, that are branch-specific. The rest of it is centralized selection.
Okay.
However, any of the monies that were spent, like from Vacaville's budget on those materials, even if they float, are designated when they come into the system. You know, this is a Vacaville item, this is a Fairfield item, this is a Vallejo. Even though they're floating, we know where the money came from.
Okay.
I'm not sure I explained that correctly. Okay. The other thing we do is we have, you know, our databases, which we pay for. There's some databases that Dixon doesn't have that the county library has, such as, and I know interest to you because you're also a school board, we have tutor.com, which is an online one-to-one tutor help for students, available 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it's basically an online tutor service where when the student or who's ever using it connects with a tutor, it's a live person who's been screened on the other side. It's a telephone thing. It started out with the state library funding this, and we've picked up the funding since then, where they can get help with math, English, any of the subjects. And it goes from kindergarten through junior college. Plus, there's a component of that for adults to help them with resume writing, which they can submit their resumes and they get feedback, how to get a job and things like that. So that's just one of the databases that we have. There's a few others, too. And I'm going to have my assistant director, Suzanne, come on up. She thought she was going to get off the hook today. If you want to talk about the databases and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Olosky. I'm the Assistant Director with the Solano County Library. So just as Bonnie said, you know, with our collection, we were kind of looking at what Dixon offers and what Solano offers, and it's pretty compatible. One of the differences that we thought was significant was the tutor.com service. But we also have the 3M ebook, the Cloud Library, that's available to county residents. So it's an additional platform for ebooks in addition to Overdrive that we offer. And there's generally less or almost no holds on the 3M Cloud books as their waiting list for the Overdrive. And so many other things, we just did RFID for our collections. And we have a new checkout, which, for self-service is, we've been getting rave reviews on the speed. The speed of that, kids love it. So that would be an added benefit as well, as with new gates and some new equipment. What else do I have here? Delivery, I know you're part of our Splash delivery system, but as part of the county, you would have delivery 6 days a week, but a little bit more expedited process, receiving materials a little bit quicker than you would through the Splash Consortium delivery. But I think you can see here just some of the processing, the ordering, all that stuff we would do kind of behind the scenes. Programming, we have celebratory things every year, such as Promises Made, Promises Kept, which comes up every January. All of our branches receive additional funds to do programming to celebrate the Measure L passage, and it's kind of like our annual report to our communities of what we've done this past year, how we've spent your money, and some of the highlights like that. So I don't know if there was anything else that we thought of, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what do you guys do to support programs within the library, such as story time and a teen literacy program or things like that? Is that, if we decided to go that route, would that still be, our job to come up with, or do you guys have some supports for
Well, we
those
don't,
programs?
we have, the branches really kind of do their own programming in that regards. They really want to connect with the community, and we just completed a strategic plan process, a pretty comprehensive one. And one of the things that was a big component of that was, kind of doing demographic and market surveys of our community, of kind of the community groups within the cities that we serve. And an approach we're taking is to have the clusters or branches kind of design programming that would meet those community groups' needs. So it wouldn't be necessarily a homogeneous approach throughout the county. Let's say we have a lot of young families, school-age kids in one community. So a lot of their programs would kind of focus on that, where maybe in another branch we might have seniors, so there might be more programming. We don't have a central programming person that says this is all we're going to do. We do kind of try to celebrate throughout the system, like measure our promises made, promises kept. We do that throughout the whole system, but everyone gets to plan something different. Story times are standard. We're going to have them baby bounce, toddler time. We have teen librarians in all of our branches, and they work collaboratively system-wide, but they also design programs that meet the needs of that community. So it wouldn't be taking away from that, but that would be a standard level of service we would expect at all the branches.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we've had, for a number of years, a couple of years now, we've had summer lunches and things with the kids. Do you guys do anything like that, or would that be on our end?
So we had 4 of our libraries participate in the summer lunch program this year. If you participate in the summer lunch program, you participate in the summer lunch program. The difference is the administrative structure of the way it works. So, obviously I'm the director and Suzanne's the assistant director, so you have an administrative staff. And then we have 2 deputy directors, one who oversees our public services, one who oversees our automation and technical services, getting materials into the library. And then we have branch managers that manage multiple branches in clusters. Then when we get down to the branch level, which is where, this would fit in, what we would propose is to have a supervising librarian, which is the day-to-day operation person in the branch. So they do the, whatever happens during the days, they're there, as opposed to management. In addition, we would propose 2 librarians, 2 full-time librarians. And it depends what your staffing is, because, they would become county library staff, but, there's lots of stuff that would have to happen before that happens, in terms of contractual agreements and things like that. 2 folks that would run, we call them library associates. They're basically 4-year degreed folks that we hired that can do information in addition to the circulation side, and then some circulation folks, and then, of course, you need shelvers. So that's all part of what you see, what we are proposing in this thing. The other thing that we didn't mention yet is we have a literacy division within the library. We do literacy throughout the county library system, from Reach Out and Read, which is pediatric literacy, to adult literacy, families for literacy, English as a second language. So we have a full-blown literacy program that I feel like a salesperson. I don't really, that any of our branches, our literacy program supports the communities that our branches are in. So, it's just looking at pulling all of the back of house, so to speak, your processing, your ordering, all that then becomes central. So what your staff in the branch is just really dealing with the public that's coming into the branch. And therefore, I think, we feel that your programming then is just, dedicated to the folks, the public that you're serving.
I just had a couple quick questions.
Sure.
The tutor.com you mentioned. So is there an added cost to the user for that, or is it
No.
just?
No, we absorb the county library pays for the tutor.com. We also have a Solano County Library Foundation that funds a little bit of that program for us. So they'll raise funds and give us money, but the majority of it is part of our budget. We feel it's too important not to have that service. It was interesting, because I was just at a foundation meeting last night, and one of the things which it really surprised me, usually I think, okay, English, math. The majority of sessions that we had in September were chemistry.
What kind of use numbers do you get out of that program?
We had about 1,000 people use that program in September. So it's well used, and right now we're doing a big advertising push to say, hey, we have this, because our numbers fell off a little bit. We thought people aren't remembering that they're there. So when our youth services librarians and our children's librarians go out to schools, they publicize it there, they publicize it at community events, in addition to being in the library, being on our website.
I'm sure my son would have liked that for chemistry, actually.
Chemistry's
As somebody who could not do algebra with my son, I was thrilled to say, why don't you just try tutor.com? Maybe they can walk you through it.
Yeah. So on the 3M, on the ebooks, what kind of devices do the users need? And does the library have a way to assist with the renting out of devices if the users don't have their own device?
Any device can be used that you can download an ebook to. So it would just be
Okay,
like.
so any Android, iPhone,
correct.
Amazon tablet.
Correct. Right now, we don't lend devices, but we are in the process of going to be lending Wi-Fi hotspots. We do an annual, we've done this for 2 years. We do an annual staff innovation grant where we budget up to $5,000, so $1,000 grant to up to 5 staff people to implement an idea that they've come up with. So this past year, one of the grant awards went to a staff member to start a small lending collection of musical instruments for children. So we're in the process of, finding a vendor, ordering those materials, and we're going to start circulating that. Wi-Fi hotspots was another staff idea. So we've actually, we consider the $1,000 kind of like a seed money, and some of them we can do within that, and others that we support system-wide. So the Wi-Fi hotspots, we're adding some money to that, and we're going to be circulating those, hopefully towards the end of the year.
So is that idea that families that don't have Wi-Fi in the home can get the hotspot from you for a certain period of time and
Correct.
use that at the home?
Correct. That was the impetus of this, but it would be open to anyone to borrow. A 3-week loan period. We're in the process of drafting a policy for that now. But that would be a new service that we would add. That was a staff idea that we supported. We've had at our Rio Vista branch, and it's going to be, there's stuff that benefits the communities overall system-wide, and then we kind of do some targeted grants, like Rio Vista is doing a little mobile makerspace cart down there, and of course it would just be for residents or whoever's visiting the Rio Vista Library, but it was important to that community and it was a well-developed idea, so we supported that. So there are just ways that we like to support staff in regards to professional development, leadership development, and really harnessing the creativity that they bring to their jobs and enthusiasm they have for that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
While they're here, I'd like to give a plug on November 4th. They're having an author's luncheon for the foundation, Solano County Library Foundation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, on page 4 and 5, we have page 5, we have recognition of the Friends of the Library. As I shared with you at the last meeting, it's National Friends of the Library Week, October 21st through the 27th. And I have listed on the certificate the names of the Friends of our library who do an extreme amount for us. They work very hard. And we contribute books to them, and they sell the books, and they don't make donations back to us. So kudos and hats off to our Friends of the Library.
Yeah, my grandmother was, for a long time, a Friends of the Library. She would call it Friends of the Library. I let her slide.
Okay. And actually, they've gone into plant sales now, so if you walk by, they have little mugs with little plants. So if you're by the library and you see one of those, there you go. And then correspondence on page 6 through 13. We have some letters from our insurance, Special District Risk Management, and they are all kudos to our library staff. Letter 1 is no paid workers' compensation claims for 17-18. And the second letter is letter and certificate and acknowledgement, so given to the president of Dixon Public Library. The President's Special Acknowledgement Award is to recognize members with no paid claims during the prior 5 consecutive program years. So that means in 5 years, Dixon Public Library has never had a workers' comp, knock on wood. And then the third letter is just a PR, and I would put the library logo on that and post that and send it out to our local paper and postings wherever we do that. Any questions? So that's all good news.
Okay.
And then next on page 14 through 23, we have the consent agenda. I know it was a long agenda, but, so I would like this for approval of the minutes, please.
Okay, any questions? Comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, do we need to pull an item?
The item is 9C. I would ask that you pull that and table that until the next meeting. I'd like to meet with John about that.
I'll make a motion to table item non-C until the November meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Sorry.
second.
Okay. I have a motion as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And now,
Now the consent agenda.
Oh.
Okay.
I'll motion approve with the changes made by the tabling, the consent agenda.
I'll second.
okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any comments? Public comments? All in
I make the
favor?
motion, and Melissa the second?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 7 is the information, and this is information only. I want to keep you updated about our budget. So I asked Ms. Dupel to run our net positions in Fund 426 and 428. I've brought you that since August, just so you can see our running balance. And then I've asked her to do the detail report for you, because you've had some questions. And so I just would like to make this a standard agenda item and for information. And if you see something
Yep.
that you'd like me to get back to you on, that I can do that
I
at the
appreciate that.
following meeting.
Can I just ask a quick question
Sure.
about this? So,
Well, it's not up to me, it's up
Well-
to your board
Yeah,
president.
go ahead.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the Fund 426, that's where if we decided to contract with the county, the money would come out of, correct? But Fund 428, that's for our building, like us remodeling the library
Yes.
and that contract that we've approved, like that
Yes.
comes out of that fund.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear about that. So with that, so 1.772,
What page are you on, Melissa?
on page 25, I just want to just make sure, the, under the Fund 426,
Yes.
where it has the 1.772, that number,
Yes.
that's currently how much we have budgeted to pay for running the library.
Operating expenses.
And they're proposing 1.5.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other
Thank you for bringing us this.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
And then on 8 discussion items, I've brought before you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 board policies for first reading. And so now is the time, or you can review that and get back to me about some questions you have or clarifications, and then I would bring them back to the November board meeting for second reading. And then if you'll turn to page 39 and 40, there is compensation in here on Board Policy 3150, and it was brought before to you. However, it was not approved, and that's why I'm bringing it to you for first reading, because I have made some changes to the compensation that I'd like to point out to you. So if you go back to page 34. So pretty much everything on page 34 is the same. There, where I made the changes, it's an italic. So for example, on 3150.2, it says, recruited at the first step of the salary range, it should be read schedule. And 3150.3.1, at the conclusion of 6-month probationary period, 13 pay periods. That's really important because there are 26 pay periods in a year. So the 6 months does not happen until after the 13th pay period, because I found that there's some uneven delivery of because you start at step 1, moving to step 2, sometimes it's been a month earlier, sometimes a month later. So identifying the 13 pay periods. And so from the date, after the date of hire, an employee may advance to the next step, salary schedule 2, with a satisfactory 6-month, 13 pay period evaluation. Okay, so then following that, 3150.3.2, at the conclusion of every 12 months, the 26 pay periods following the 6-month period, employee may advance to the next step on the salary schedule, because there's been uneven delivery about, a month in advance, a month later, so this makes it more clear. And then 3150.3.3, I gave you an example. So 5 years of continuous service, 2% is added to the salary schedule. And we have employees in 5 years that have worked 60 days because they work one Sunday a month, and they've been receiving that 2%, where the full-time equivalent is working several hours more. So what I've done here is in the box in the middle of the page, years of service, longevity pay, full-time, part-time. And I gave you the example of a 50%. So if you have 5 years of service and you're full-time, you would receive the 2%. If you're 50%, you would receive the 2% at the end of 10 years. That is in the board policy. However, it has not been adhered to. So no matter if you work 60 days over 5 years, or the full-time, which is 261 days, you've received the 2%. And there's an inequity there. So you could do that way, or you could prorate it. So a part-time person of 50% would receive 1% at the end of 5 years. But I'm not sure that you're aware of people who just work a Sunday or 50% that everybody on the staff has been receiving at the end of their years.
This makes a lot of sense.
So,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. And then going further down, 3150.4, just because it's in the board language policy, that the employee will be placed on the higher salary schedule step that represents a 5% increase. So what I wrote here is example 1. Page employee on step 2 of the page salary schedule receives $11.04 an hourly rate. The page is promoted to the position of library clerk, which happens. The page in his or her new position of library clerk would be placed on library clerk step 1. So that's confusing to employees because I'm step 2 and I'm step 1. But if on the clerk, the step 1 is $13.44, which is an increase of over 5%. And then I gave you an second example. And so this is so when you're speaking with employees that they could clearly see the examples given. Because a lot of times board policy and is not clear. So that's why I'm bringing back 3150. And then the next one on page 42, financial audit. We've just finished an audit of 3 years, and to go back and find all those artifacts or evidence was time-consuming, very time-consuming. And our board policy reads that the district library shall provide its financial records and transactions are subject to an audit review every 2 years. I wrote in annually because when the auditor comes next month, you will see that there are some findings about our process. And last month, I brought you a couple of the verbiage that they had shared. So I think that to find the documents and bring them forward where it's fresh in everybody's mind, an annual audit would be best. But that's up to you because it does say 2 years, and we're just finishing 3. And so I have the new language that I'm proposing as first reading and the board policy.
That will help us stay on top of it, so we don't get
Yes.
behind.
Yes.
There's no reason why we should have to do multiple years of audits at one time. That's confusing, probably harder to find the information, to keep track of what is for what year.
Right.
And,
Well,
I
and the
agree, it should
fact
be
that
annually.
And the fact that a 3-year audit was done in the board policy stipulates too, we're not in compliance, so.
Thank you for looking into
Would that, doing it annually, would that have any significant added cost as opposed to doing a biannual audit?
It would have an annual cost, yes, so it would increase. However, doing 3 years was expensive because of the delays in finding the artifacts and working both ways and, changeover of staff. The library is very crowded as far as storage, and so you have to go out to the Miller Building or the annex to gather materials, and so,
Probably ends up being a wash, I would imagine. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
or
paying
not
for
too
3
big.
years in 1 year versus paying every single year, it probably ends up being approximately the same cost.
And it would certainly be more efficient doing it
And
each
more
year.
accurate, I bet,
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
So with a renovation project going as well, then we would be very clear as to, when the new, personnel would be very clear about what is in your budget. So the changes on page 44 and 45, I'd like you to take a look at page 45. It is 5,006.2. One, in the current board language, it says reserves for buildings, $650,000 for the purposes of property acquisition in a new library facility. We do not have $650,000 in our, for property acquisition or new library facility. I think, I don't know whether several years ago or a couple years ago, the library district acquired property. So if you want us to build to that, or you want to change that number, because that's Fund 428. 2, reserve for emergency operations. We do have at least $250,000 for purposes of emergency operations, so we do have that. And then 3, in the reserves for capital acquisition, there's $50,000. We currently have $29,000. And the last time this was revised was in 2006, so you can see over time, things have changed. And then, anyway, but below at the bottom, it says assets, cash and treasury. When you looked at the fund in balance for 428, there is a balance of $698,000 in cash and treasury, but that is different than being reserved for building. Okay?
See, in 428, this is current report on page 25. Page 25, it says 802,000.
That's cash and treasury.
Okay.
But that's, but this is as of August 31st. When I was working on this board policy, Ms. Dupel had not,
Oh, update.
Created this.
So we do have a little bit.
So
now we
that's
have
why I
more-
put the
Now we
date.
have more.
yes.
Okay,
Okay, got it.
thank you.
Thank you.
But I just want you to be aware, because we're moving forward with JKA Architects and Engineers. And so just in the back of your mind,
And that comes out of this fund.
yes. So, and then once again, I have, the current board policy. And there's no really changes to 5007. And then in 3100, there are quite a few changes about the mileage. And compared to 5051 are the changes that I'm recommending. They're 2 pages, and currently the policy is on page 52, and it's less than half a page.
I had a question about that.
Sure.
On 3100.2, where it says proof of adequate insurance. What does adequate insurance mean? I mean,
Well,
should we have a policy limit liability amount set forth?
Yes.
Or how are we determining when someone submits their proof of insurance, whether it's adequate?
It's not a practice that's been happening. So it has not been happening that, if people are going to Solano County or to Woodland Library or something, I have not asked them. They've never been asked, according to the staff. So that may be something you want to take out, but our SDMRA, they can give us guidelines, our liability insurance.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and I did see that the prior policy limited that requirement to when the employee is transporting patrons. And that is just leaving a big hole of where we could have liability. If we have an employee that goes out and is driving on the job and kills someone,
Right.
and they haven't submitted any proof of insurance because they're not moving patrons. So that was a good change. I'm glad you caught. But I do think we need to consult with
SDRMA.
our liability carrier, our counsel, about what we should put in there for
Okay.
our liability coverage. And maybe we need to have a, amount in there that then our policy is excess over that.
So on the prior policies for first reading, I've given examples, so I can list an example. I can embed that in there. So when an employee would read through it, or a board member or an outside person, they would know that it was in board policy and what it means.
Yeah, because potentially, say an employee was driving on work business, and they got in a wreck and their insurance didn't cover, say they had liability only, then we would have to pick that up. Possibly, because they're on work doing their work duties.
So I did bring the property liability program, so I could answer that question. And automobile liability. Auto liability coverage protects members from lawsuits for bodily injury and property damages to the public arising out of ownership, maintenance, or use of a covered vehicle. And so I didn't have time to call because this was pulled up for me today. I didn't know what a covered vehicle, if that meant covered by the library or their personal. Coverage includes owned vehicles, non-owned, and hired vehicles, and uninsured motorists. Limits minimum 2.5 million per occurrence, no annual aggregate. Deductible none. Bodily injury, $1,000. Property damage per occurrence.
So normally, I mean, as long as our policies cover employees in course and scope of employment, which I'm sure that probably does, we would be fine.
Okay.
If they're driving, if we're going to require proof of insurance, their policies that describe their own vehicles would be primary. And so that would cover first and ours would be excess.
Right.
Either way, we as a board can decide if we're not going to make an employee have insurance, our insurance, as long as we confirm that it would cover an employee in that situation,
Okay.
we could do that. But I think if we're going to have it in the policies that they're going to provide proof of insurance, then we need to decide what we're asking them to provide. And just
Okay.
saying adequate, in my view, doesn't really tell anything.
No,
Yeah.
I agree.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
The old policy said reimbursement shall be
What
submitted.
page are you on, Melissa?
Oh, still on page 50, still. But the old policy said the reimbursement should be submitted no later than 60 days. And I don't see that
On the mileage?
in the new, yeah, because, I mean, should they be able to stretch it out for months and months and say, oh, yeah, I have a mileage reimbursement?
No, I thought that, okay.
3100.1 says no later than 60 days. Is that?
The one that was the old policy.
Yeah, that's the old policy, so I will have to, I didn't catch that, thank you.
So I want to make sure I'm clear. So you're talking page 50 and 51 are the new policy?
Yeah, what I'm recommending.
Okay, so then we need
52
to
is-
take off that language is the employee is going to be transporting patrons.
Okay,
It should be broader. It should be any employee in the course and scope of his or her duties.
okay, and what number is that?
This is
Luke?
page 51, the last part. And then that's where that adequate is also in that same paragraph.
Okay,
That's perfect. And so we'll add back in 60 days? Okay,
thank you.
thank you. And as you're updating these, are they going into a procedure manual?
No,
that-
because I can't put them in there till they're approved.
I mean, that's what I mean, after, because
Yeah.
we've approved
Once
some
they are
before.
approved,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ones you approved last month, they're in
Are
the
in there.
binder, and what was there was taken out,
Thank you.
the pass.
Okay.
Okay, moving to page 53, action items, number 9, 53 through 88 are second reading of board policies, and we have 6, I think, 5. So this is the second time you've seen this. I brought it last month as first reading, and this month as second reading.
I think my only question on these was on 3030.5.
Okay, what page, Luke?
That's page 63. Which is basically drawing a distinction between how Easter was going to be handled as a holiday versus all other Sunday holidays. And I was wondering, although I'm sure it's intended there, it says Easter will not be celebrated on Monday. If we should actually put in there, it will be treated as a holiday on Easter Sunday,
Okay,
which I assume is what the intent was. But it just says all other holidays will be observed on Monday, but not Easter.
right.
And so,
So I'm taking that from prior language, and it was revised on, well, you can see July 13th.
Yeah, and I mean,
Okay. So it will be treated as a holiday on Sunday.
That's good, good point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So that's an action item.
You can take them all together or separately. And if I make the changes that Luke just suggested and you all agree, can I add that language, the verbiage, and then if you approve it, add it to the,
Yeah, we can approve it with
Okay.
the addition, yeah.
Public comment first.
Okay,
Do we have any board comments?
besides, thank you for all your hard work.
oh, you're welcome.
Any public comments? Seeing none? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move 9A as amended.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Actually, it is a,
No,
nope, okay,
she's just tricking you by putting it on there. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
tricky.
because I'm doing the minutes, I want to make it easier for myself. Like, okay, who voted what? The next item is a report for public facilities fees.
Mhm.
And that begins on page 76. And I did it a little different. Instead of having an appendix, I just embedded it, answered the question right there and then, instead of having to switch. So it looks a little different, but the information is the same and updated. And this report, like Measure L, it goes, once you approve it, it goes to the Board of Supervisors, Solano Board of Supervisors. So I'm learning a whole lot. In the school districts, we didn't have to do this.
Anybody have any questions?
Nope.
You know, I have a question.
Go for it.
So via the school district, we've looked at raising our fees, our building fees, is that something that we can ever look at on the library side of those revenues? Or is it, we just get what we get? For those of you who,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't think so. I think those are all the fees,
based on
yeah,
a city ordinance or
yeah.
something? Okay. Just a question that popped into my head.
Yeah, do you want me to find that out?
Yeah, it might be interesting to know. I mean, since we're going through the process of approving that to be done for all the new homes that are going to be built,
Okay,
the developer fees. Okay,
Okay. Any public comments on this? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I have a motion of, okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
who made the first?
Melissa.
Thank you. And 9C is pulled,
Mm-hmm.
and closed session.
Okay.
Thank you.
And do we have any public comments about closed session? Seeing none? Okay, we'll adjourn to closed session.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm bringing this meeting back to order. Announcements from closed session. The board voted unanimously, or the board, by unanimous vote of all members present, has decided not to renew the probationary contract of the current library director, which expires on October 11th, 2018. And meeting adjourned.